Welcome to the Making Sense of Magic podcast, a conversation between two members of the Scottish Magic the Gathering community where we discuss our most recent musings and try to make some sense of the game that we've been obsessing over for far too long. Hello and welcome to our first episode. I am joined by the heel of Scottish Magic, Craig Stewart. How you doing, Craig?
Yeah, not bad yourself.
I don't know how you feel about that title of the heel of Scottish Magic. I've been banding it about a wee bit.
I'm absolutely fine with it. I'm more than happy to play the heel.
I've never seen someone win so many games to so little applause. What is it you're currently qualified for?
I'm currently qualified for the RC2. Is all I'm currently qualified for, I believe, right now. I didn't qualify for the first RC, so I didn't manage to chain that into anything. So
that's not very impressive.
And what are you currently qualified for, Scott? Okay.
I'm operating on a level above that.
And I am joined today by Kevin, who is a long-serving member of the Scottish community, owner of West End Games, and hater of Eternal formats. You can usually find him playing Limited and complaining about playing anything else.
I've got good reasons for all of those Eternal format hatreds. Like, they just haven't made a good one in a long time. I think Pioneer is maybe the closest thing they've made to a good Eternal format. Is my hot take of the day.
Pioneer's certainly fun. I like the toned down power level. I enjoy getting to play turns of Magic.
Yeah, I mean that was always my problem with Modern when it first launched. Is it just felt like it didn't feel like Magic in the same way that Legacy doesn't feel like Magic because you run both players run out of resources so fast.
Yeah, and it can just divulge to Limited games when your plan is stopped by their hate piece A and your plan B hasn't came online.
It's funny you mention as well the long serving member of the Scottish community, because actually in the store yesterday we had a bunch of people who were in the Scottish community when I joined the scene, and they played on the Pro Tour in the early 2000s and stuff. So it was interesting to see the generation before me coming in, because again, as I've been calling you the heel of Scottish Magic recently, someone joked that I'm like the Hollywood Hogan of the Scottish Magic scene, perennially known and fading into irrelevancy. But no, it's been good. It's been good getting back into it, because I haven't played a lot of competitive in the last 3 or 4 years. So getting to play the team events recently have been good.
Yeah, team event's always fun, you know. I believe that's probably the first time at a team event recently that we've actually played against each other in possibly 6 years.
It's because you stay away from the limited seat normally. You're scared. You won't enter my ring.
Yeah, just send someone else into that one. I'll just find the busted deck and play Brain Dead Magic all day.
Yeah, do you know, it was funny because we're playing Cube in the shop. One of my employees, he's an 18-year-old young gun going to be a star one day. I know it, right? And I absolutely crushed him at Cube, and he got really, really salty towards the end. He just scoop conceded. He's like, nah, we're not playing this. This is turn 5 or something. I'm playing a blue-black control deck, and he's just down 3 cards on turn 5 or 6, and he's like, nah, just scoops. It's fine. Don't want to play. And then later on, I was talking to him and I was saying oh, you didn't like that, did you? You didn't like losing to a guy in his 30s. And in his defence, he came back a bit more gracious. He's like, well, to be fair, if I'm going to lose to someone in their 30s, I'd rather lose to someone who's been to the Mythic Championships and been to the World Cup and things like that. So
that's fair. That's fair.
And I heard you defending me the other day in a group call as well.
I will never admit to this.
We'll get on to that actually, because it's related to something I want to talk about later today.
Okay.
But it was about Shieldred. What's she called? The Apocalypse Shieldred. She's just called the Apocalypse. Just Shieldred the Apocalypse.
Oh, okay.
Because I remember when it was spoiled, we were chatting about it in the group chats, and folk were like, "Oh, it's the Apocalypse, but she's only a 4/5," and I was like, "This card is nuts!" This card is unkillable. This card presents a clock without doing anything. It combos with like all of these pay life draw card effects. Like I'm like, this card is busted. This card is going to put mid range on the map. And like I was laughed out the building as the guy who's always championing like mid range Durdle piles. They're like, nah, it's just another card for your black green deck. Like we've got Kalitas. We don't need Shieldred. Like.
Yeah, you certainly did. It was I wasn't 100% sold on it because the thing that got me off it was right at the start. Everyone was just looking at combo with it. And they were like figuring out that Days Undoing doesn't work, and this doesn't work, and this doesn't work. Then people just started casting it for 4, and it would win games.
Yeah, that's quite a meandering route of who we are. Like, what are we trying to accomplish here? What's the whole purpose of this podcast going to be?
Basically, we're just looking to just chat about Magic every week. We're going to talk about what we've been playing, talk about a couple of formats. Usually we might go up to some of the more powerful formats, but probably not as often. Me and Kev are kind of both enjoyers of Dirtly Magic, so we'll try and keep it to the lower power level formats, but just talk about what we've been playing, what we think might be good going forward.
Yeah, like it's actually an interesting discussion to have because I was planning to do a podcast for the store, and I had a bunch of Magic themed episodes I wanted to do and people I wanted to talk to. So I kind of wanted that just to bring Magic more into like the discussion, because I think there's a bunch of greater meta points that a lot of people don't talk about, or I feel as a store owner don't talk about enough. Like how paper Magic affects the community, and even things like the secondary market and stuff that I'm quite involved in, with buying a lot of collections and mass opening booster boxes and things.
Sure, yeah.
So I was planning stuff like that, but yeah, it was like a kind of weird meeting of minds, like two people in the same place at the same time. What did you want out of the podcast before we kind of amalgamated what we both wanted?
Basically, I have quite a busy schedule with work, and I was looking to make some sort of Magic content, and so with my busy schedule at work, streaming's kind of out the window, because if you want to like kind of make it in streaming, you have to have a schedule, you have to be doing X amount of hours streaming, whereas I feel like if someone was to give me the option to sit down and just chat about Magic for 2-3 hours a week, then I'm happy to take that. So
you feel that this is the easy option?
It's not so much the easier option, but also just I don't think I'd be very good at streaming, so
I can't be bothered putting the effort in, so I'll start a podcast.
Just start a podcast, right? It's what everyone does nowadays.
But yeah, so I think the general idea is that we're just going to. I know this has probably been a lot longer of an intro than we're planning on in the future, but I'm hoping that future podcasts can just start with like, so what have you been up to this week, and it's going to vary wildly because you're obviously on the grind right now with between Modo and Arena, and now that Paper's back, like there's going to be a lot of kind of real competitive Magic you're going to be sinking your teeth into, and I feel like on my side there's going to be a lot of like community Magic that I'm going to be involved in, just in the store, whether that's buying collections, whether that's running tournaments, just meeting interesting folk in and about the community. So I think between us there's going to be a decent mix of things to chat about. You also find the overlap.
You also have been involved in like you say, the World Cups, multiple Pro Tours, so you know you've been in and around the competitive scene, so that the kind of testing doesn't change too much.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's what I'm saying. I think it's going to be quite an interesting meeting of minds, hopefully, over the coming episodes, and hopefully my takes aren't too boomer. Just for context, when did you start playing Magic?
I started my first event, in fact, was the Rivals of Ixalan pre-release. I'd have to double check when that is exactly, but I think
that's so interesting, because I remember going to I was playing GPs then. I went to a Rivals of Ixalan pre-release GP. It was either the pre-release weekend or it was the release weekend. They done like a team sealed Rivals of Ixalan GP. So okay. That's so weird that you were like learning the game, and I was off in some European city like playing a team event with two boys from Edinburgh.
the weird thing about it is I never actually planned to play Magic. I went in for to play D&D. And then a guy local to me, his name's Tom Henry, it just convinced me after that to stay and play this pre-release. And I come from a competitive sports background, so anything competitive in any way can get me hooked. And just like playing that one event and seeing the standings at the end, and I'm like, oh, okay, I could probably get up there.
Yeah, I had a very similar experience as my intro to Magic. Now, I played very little Magic in high school. Like, me and my friends, we played a lot of like retro video games in high school, and for one of my mates' birthdays, probably 17th birthday, because we're still in high school, I was in Waterstones looking for a birthday present for him, and I ironically bought him a Magic intro deck because he's a big fucking nerd. There's some fucking Magic cards.
Sure, yeah.
So like, I ironically bought him Magic cards as like a 17th birthday present, and then I bought myself an intro deck and went, fuck it, you know what, if I'm buying this as a gift for him, like, we can play together, and we played in the common room and stuff. But that was pretty much it. Never really touched it. Played half a dozen games in high school and then shelved it. And then same idea. I went to play. It wasn't D&D I wanted to play. But that's a different conversation why I don't like D&D. But I wanted to get into tabletop role playing when I went to uni, and I joined the Glasgow University Game Society, GUGS. But because I spent like Freshers Week and the following week after Freshers Week just fucking partying and getting pissed, I missed the first week of GUGS, which is the week everybody gets into their roleplay games. So I showed up the week after everyone had been assigned a game, basically, and they're like, yeah, sorry, all the games are full. And I was like, oh, is there anything I can do? And people in Glasgow might remember his name, but he might also have faded into obscurity now as well. Michael Gebauer, big Jeb, was like, oh, well, I'll teach you how to play Magic. I was like, oh, I kind of play with my friends, and that was it. That was me drafting every week at GUGS. I loved it, like, because I have that kind of drive where if I lose, I'm going to look back at the entire game, figure out why I lost, come back next week, like, ready to, like take that punch again and, like, throw it back. Like,
sure, yeah.
So that was awesome, like, and I think that's why Limited has always been, like, my go-to format, because, like, that's where I cut my teeth, like. I didn't have a standard deck till I'd played Magic for about 18 months. It was just always draft at the Union.
Yeah, mine was kind of a little bit different than that, in that I got, after the pre-release, I played a little bit of draft. I really enjoyed draft, but Rivals of Ixalan, I didn't realise how bad it was at the time, but it's basically 3 archetypes, and you just pick one of them, and probably quite a good one to learn in, to be fair. But Tom basically just started giving me standard decks and sending me to PPTQs, and I was doing pretty well in them, and I didn't even realise that, like, top 8ing wasn't the normal until, like, my 4th PPTQ, sorry. So I kind of started in standard, and then got more into limited after that.
So yeah, it's funny, like, that pre-release has been the frame for this, and ironically, I started playing, like, those intro decks I bought my friend, they were original Zendikar intro decks, but by the time I got to uni, the current set was Scars of Mirrodin.
Okay.
Maybe Scars of Mirrodin came out like that week or whatever. Like, so maybe when I first went, they were drafting like the core set, and then it was Scars of Mirrodin. But my first pre-release was Mirrodin Besieged. And it's funny because to date, when we're recording this, pre-release for Phyrexia All Will Be One is just over. And that was an absolute cunt of a weekend for me, man. Like, try to run it in the store, like, so brutal. Like, we did all our mass box openings, and then straight after doing the mass box openings on Friday lunchtime, we went straight into F&M, which was a pre-release. And then after that, like, I wanted to play, so, like, I kept a bunch of people after the event to draft, and we did draft. We were there till 2 in the morning, and it was back in 11 a.m. the next day, do it again. So I mean, and then after that, the D&D guys came in. So by the end of Saturday, I'd spent about 36 hours in the shop between Friday and Saturday.
My weekend was a little bit different. Me and my girlfriend's family had hired a massive house with a pool and a sauna. And I was in a town where my old LGS was. So I ended up I left the pool and the sauna for, an afternoon to go and do a pre-release. And I spent about 5 hours in a LGS and the rest of the time just in a pool.
Yeah, I mean it's funny, isn't it? Just like when pre-release calls, like I went to a pre-release in Poland, because I was on a holiday with my girlfriend, and I was like, oh, it's pre-release weekend, and just went and played like 3 rounds of a pre-release in some like Polish store where like less than half of the people could speak English.
Pre-releases that I was thinking, because I was going on this like mini break this weekend, that I wasn't going to get to play a pre-release, and this would have probably been the first pre-release I've ever missed. So I was kind of gutted, but then I was talking to Gary Campbell, and Gary was like, we're running 1-on-1 at 1 p.m, and I'm like, I could probably make that.
So how did it go? Smash it? 5-0?
4-0, just... They only did 4 rounds. There was 2 4-0s at the end of them. It was me and my girlfriend Kirsten.
So you just ran the tables and then went back to the sauna?
Pretty much. That's exactly how it happened. What about yourself? How did you do?
Well, I mean, that's what I'm saying. I didn't get to play.
Oh, yeah, of course.
But in the draft, I went 2-1.
Okay.
Drafted a sweet toxic deck. Lost to some red-white equipment thing.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, like funnily enough, like it was we just ran 4 rounds as well, which I'm surprised that's what Highlander did, because Highlander's known as being quite a spiky store, which is good. Like I loved playing there. I lived out in Perth for about 18 months, and I loved playing there because I just got to play with like really strong players, and I feel like that's where I got really strong.
Yeah, that's kind of the same with me. I used to go through to I stayed in Perth as well, actually. And I used to go to Highlander every week just because, the scene there was so much stronger than everywhere else that I could go to.
Yeah. And so I'm surprised, because I remember like way back, like when I started playing, it was all these Spellbound pre-releases, and they would be like 6-7 rounds. They were like an ordeal to play. So it's interesting that Dundee is now just doing the 4 rounds. Like I do the 4 rounds because... like pre-release is a casual event, and it should be catered towards the casual players.
Yeah, for sure. I kind of like flat price support at pre-release, but Highlander obviously isn't that. A little bit more spiky, like you say.
Yeah. I mean, the way we do pack per win plus participations.
To be fair, I do think they were planning on doing a 5th kind of final round because there was 2 4-0s, but because it was me and Kirsten, it didn't really matter.
Yeah. But yeah, so because of the flat pricing, and also like what I was finding when we used to run bigger, longer events was like it should be targeted at the casual market, and I was finding that the casual players were just done. Like by the time you've built a seal pool and played 4 rounds, you've been there for like 5.5 hours.
Yeah,
and like
their brains are kind of fried by that point. They just want to go home.
And to make it clear, like we're the weirdos that can like hyper focus on a card game for 7 hours. Like that's no slight at casual players. Like
then go home.
I think that's perfectly normal to be like done with an activity after like 4.5 hours.
Yeah. Whereas we focus for 7 hours, then go home and think about it for 3 more.
But yeah, the set seems sweet. Any first impressions?
I was more impressed by Toxic in a limited environment than I expected to be.
Yes. Now this is the thing I wanted to really, really talk about, because I did play the Toxic deck, and I kind of soft wanted to force a Toxic deck when I sat down to do the draft, because I wanted to kind of push it to its limits. Because like I said, I started playing Magic Unlimited in Scars of Mirrodin Besiege New Phyrexia, which was Poison. So I kind of learned how to play around that, and Poison was weird because like it was a trap for new drafters, because you couldn't mix your creature types really, or you ended up like having to do 30 damage essentially, right? Because your infect creatures didn't deal normal damage, so if half of your creatures were infect and half of your creatures weren't infect, and you drew a mix, you were actually counting up 2 life totals at the same time.
Yeah, and you'd get stuck at 8 infect, then have to switch on to another plan, and it didn't really work.
Yeah. So I wanted to see how Toxic felt, and there wasn't a lot of poison kills.
Oh, really?
Which was cool, because I think they've done a really good job of making poison matter without 10 poison, right? Because they always say in Magic, like, oh, only your last life point matters, which is kind of true, but it's very true with poison counters, right? if you have 9 poison counters, who cares really?
Yeah.
You know, it's the 10th one that matters. Whereas with life, if you're on 1 life, you can't crack your fetch lands. You'll die to like your Phyrexian Arena. Like one life point is sometimes tenuous, but like 9 poison's totally fine. Whereas because of the corrupted mechanic, like sometimes just having a little bit of toxic was all you needed, and then you just killed them with normal damage. But the fact all your other spells just became so much more efficient. Like now 3 poison is the line. Like you just want to get them to 3 poison, and then all your spells are better than their spells if you've built a corrupted deck.
Corrupted was a lot more relevant than I expected to be. I had a couple cards where they were okay on rate, and I'm like, how often am I going to have corrupted? Like, are these worth running? And it's just so easy to enable, and it works so well.
Yeah, like we'll get onto this in the later discussions, but yeah, I think corrupted is like sleeper OP, like for constructed formats.
Okay.
So I think that's going to be interesting. But yeah, toxic was great. I really liked the fact that unlike poison, unlike infect, which just was like a race to get them to 10, I feel like toxic really captures that Phyrexian feel of corruption's the best word I can imagine. That creeping dread of like now you've got 1, you're going to die soon, because like there was one game where there was a board stall, my opponent was on 6, and because the board just stalled, I was like, okay, I'm just going to stop attacking and I'll eventually draw my proliferate cards and you'll die.
Yeah, the fact that you can proliferate just is... I really enjoyed the toxic mechanic. My experience with it was a little different in that I played 8 games of Magic and gave out 80 poison counters. I won every game via poison counters. I say that I count the concessions to my T-Rex Toxic 4 Haste 8/8 as getting to the 10 poison counters, but yeah, I wasn't expecting to go into Toxic because I kind of felt like it was a trap. Like I hadn't looked at too much of the limited cards from the set, but it's one of those, when you go into certain sets, you just think this is going to be a trap, this isn't going to be real, you know. But my deck I had the 1-drop Might, that's the Mother of Runes style card, and that
Skrelv, right?
Yeah, Skrelv, that's the one. Multiple games I opened on Skrelv and then went into the 2-drop green Toxic 2 creature. And that clock is just insanely fast. You just hit them once with your Skrelv, then you're activating on your Toxic 2 creature and dealing them 3 poison a turn.
The Nurse as well, the one that gives all your toxic creatures more toxic.
Plague Nurse, yeah.
I had 2 of those in my draft deck, and
nice.
Yeah. But again, like it did feel like a lot of the time you were just killing them with normal damage, but it did give you this kind of weird edge. So like when I was talking about before, where damage and infect felt like 2 different clocks, now all your infect creatures are like silently like 1 extra power in a different way. It's cool. Yeah. It's like a really nice twist on it, right? Because they are more powerful. Like the bloated Contaminator, right? The fact he's got Toxic 1 is almost irrelevant because he's a 4/4 trample, but like he's like a 4.5/4. You know, like because he's doing something else. Like I know he's got like proliferate and stuff, but that's just the first one that came to my head, right? Because with that bloated Contaminator card, you're going to kill them with damage more often than not, right? But the toxic gives it this like other thing it's doing that, you know.
Yeah, usually with these cards that have a set mechanic on them as well, they're slightly understated because they have this extra thing. I didn't really feel that the toxic creatures were understated at all.
No, not yeah, and I think that's the thing, like, because you can just play them in your limited decks.
Yeah,
that don't care about toxic. Like, if that's your only toxic creature, then that's fine. You don't feel like you're being penalised for playing it.
Yeah,
like you did with infect.
A 2-drop that's statted accordingly.
Yeah, because like sometimes in like new Phyrexia and things, you would go, I'll take this 2-drop with infect, I guess, because I need a 2-drop, and like you basically were like, well, it's just a blocker like that'll wither down my opponent's creature, you know, like
I guess it's gonna die.
It'll maybe trade up because it has that wither effect that infect had, but like but you couldn't really use it to race. So I think that's a big slam dunk. Any other takeaways from the set?
I'm interested in a way that I haven't got to play against many rare planeswalkers yet. I didn't open any rare planeswalkers in my pool, and I played against 0 rare planeswalkers. So
That's
I didn't.
interesting, because like it felt like everyone had at least one. Like I saw a pool that had 4.
Yeah, I think a couple of my opponents did have them. They just either never drew them, or I managed to get through toxic damage before they had a chance to deploy them. But none of them hit the field anyway.
I do think, like, to the credit of the set designers, and you tell me if I'm wrong here, but like it feels like all the planeswalkers that have the ability to take over a game are the mythic ones, right? It feels like the rare one, the only rare one that I can think of off the top of my head that like will absolutely dominate a game is Kaya, but she costs 7, so fair enough. Like
the Eternal, the Wanderer card seems really hard to deal with as well. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess I forgot about her. Because people compare her to Elspeth Sun's Champion. I don't know if you ever played in a format where she was relevant.
Only Vintage Cube.
Right, okay. Because she was monstrous in Standard.
I can imagine.
They're different cards, right? But like, they're similar in the way that like they have the ability to wrath the board the turn they come down, then build an army following that. So like, you bring it down, you wrath the board, then your opponent plays something like on their side of the board, and then you untap, then you get to play something, then you also get to flood the board. I don't think she's on the par with Elspeth, because Elspeth protected herself ridiculously, because like, even though a 2/2 double strike is a great creature, 3 1/1s is just impenetrable. Like, you were never getting through to her unless you had a flyer. And then also her ultimate actually won the game, whereas the Wanderers doesn't, right? Like, her ultimate is her wrath. She doesn't have an end goal. Her ultimate is her wrath. And I know she does get to do it the turn she comes out, but so they're very different in the way that like Elspeth gave you inevitability, whereas the Wanderer is just a board presence enabler. You just get ahead on board by playing her.
I can see it in like kind of your white mid-range decks as kind of a 6-drop, but I don't know if it's better than Sanctuary Warden. So it's one of those things. Someone might find a spot for it in grindy meta games, but I'm not 100% sold on it for constructed.
I mean, is there anything else in the set that jumps out? We've talked about Corrupted, we've talked about Toxic, we've talked about the rare walkers. I don't think For Mirren is particularly interesting, apart from the callback to the living weapon stuff. But
yeah, I think the most interesting part about that mechanic is that they put an exclamation mark on it. Like, just encouraging people at a pre-release to shout for Mirrodin. I imagine, especially at the midnight pre-releases, that would have been
Did anyone shout for Mirrodin at your pre-release?
I did. My first opponent decided to shout it in every single one of his equipments he cast that entire game. So,
I mean, I'm glad he was having a good time.
He certainly was, until the T-Rex hit the board.
It doesn't seem like the Mirrens are going to have a great time against that T-Rex.
No, I don't think. That T-Rex is obnoxious.
Well, that's it, right? It's Toxic, Corrupted, For Mirren, Proliferate, which we alluded to, but it's mainly there to enable
your toxic effects, yeah.
Which surprised me, because like when I was doing my announcement at the start of the pre-release events, I was like talking about the kind of counters. There doesn't seem to be. There's oil counters in the set. That's the other one. Oil counters as well.
Oh yeah, of course.
But there's no like -1/-1 counters, which I associate with Phyrexians. So the fact there was no -1 counters was interesting to me in the set.
Yeah, I did have. I was playing against one of my good friends who came through from Perth as well, Jamie Simon, and he was a couple times just almost didn't want to block some of my toxic creatures because he's so used to them getting -1 counters, and so that's kind of almost an advantage of being a new player.
So is there anything else then from the set that jumps out to you? Because I imagine you're looking at this with a really kind of spiky mindset. Is there any cards that have jumped out to you as being like, I need to test this card? Especially, I mean, your RCQ is coming up, right? When is the RC2?
The RC is 10th of March.
Okay, cool. So you've got 5 weeks, 6 weeks?
Yeah, 5-6 weeks. I think I've got a couple people I'm going to be testing with, and I think we're due to start testing next week.
The reason I think this set's so exciting is just from looking at it, because I've opened a couple of cases of this set just to get stuff into the store binders. And just reading the cards as they were moving through my hands and things and pricing up rares, like, this set feels really high power. So surely there must be a few cards in here that, like, you've already earmarked as, like, this is going to change the shape of a format. What is the RC format? Is it just standard?
The RC is just standard, yeah.
So are you looking at everything with a standard filter on it then at the minute?
Kind of. I've got a couple local Pioneer things coming up as well. So I have been looking at some cards for decks in Pioneer, but mostly with a standard mindset.
I've made a short list of cards that I think are interesting for a few reasons.
Okay.
But I think it would be more interesting to see what my kind of washed has been Magic brain is compared to your hyper competitive one right now, to see if there's any overlap, and then I'll see if I can win you over with any of my, like, Wild Mongrels used to be a good card, maybe it can be again mindset, right? So where are you at? What's your standouts then from this set?
So my main one that I can't seem to quite figure out how it's going to be played yet is and it's got one of the worst first words in it ever. I have no idea how to say this.
The dragon?
Yeah, the Capricious Hellraiser.
Interesting. Okay, this is one of mine as well. So let's hear your rundown of it, and then we'll see how the notes compare.
I just feel like it's an effect that is so well rated. Like, on if you can cast this for free, for free mana, this card is just so unbelievably statted that it cannot be bad. Like,
yes, this is my thinking, right? Because, like, I can just see this in, like, any red mid-range pile. And God knows I love a mid-range pile, right? Because, like, once you get this to 3 mana, no matter what it does.
Yeah, if it's a free mana 4/4 flying Snapcaster Mage.
So just for the sake of people at home, it is 3 red, so it's 6 mana total for a 4/4 with flying that costs 3 less if you have 9 or more cards in your graveyard. And when it enters the battlefield, you exile 3 random cards from your graveyard and then choose a non-creature, non-land card from among them and copy it. You may cast the copy without paying a mana cost. So if your graveyard's just full of non-land, non-creatures, then it just gets you a free card, right?
Well, that's something that I actually find interesting. That if it's actually full of creatures and lands as well, it means you can get the cards you want more frequently, if that makes sense. So,
but you can't, right? Because if he just randomly pulls, like if your graveyard's full of it's 3 random cards. So if you only have 1 sorcery in there, you're not guaranteed to get that 1 sorcery.
Okay, yes. Sorry, I kind of misunderstood this. I thought it could only pick the non-creatures.
No. Right.
Sure,
so this is what I mean. This is why I don't think it's as clear cut as that.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, you've got to build your deck in a way that tries to minimize the misses.
You minimize the number of creatures you're playing, basically. Which I think a lot of good mid-range decks do anyway, right? You're only playing maybe 12 creatures that are high impact, and then you're playing like Planeswalkers and Disruption and all this other stuff, right? So in a format without fetch lands, like, your bin is just going to be full of like Thoughtseizes, removal spells, dead Planeswalkers, and you're just trying to find your threat that goes over the top.
And in both Standard and Pioneer, it is in the same colour as Fable of the Mirrorbreaker.
Fable of the Mirrorbreaker, Liliana of the Veil, like, who notoriously dies quite a lot because, like, she minuses herself down after, like, double edicting them.
Yeah.
So what shell are you thinking this? Does it have a standard home that it slots straight into, or?
Not so much slot straight into. I think you could switch about some things in either the Boros mid-range that already plays Invoke Despair, and not Invoke Despair, Invoke Calamities, the wing that brings back something for free white and a 1.
Oh yeah, I was just thinking, like, oh my god, imagine this dragon cast Invoke Despair, like the game's just over.
Yeah, and that's the other way that I would go would be a Rakdos shell, where you've got your Fables, you've got your Lilianas, you've got a lot of like power word kills, your different just Doomblade effects, and then just getting to the point where you drop this and it either kills a creature or gets to replay your planeswalker, which then edicts them.
Yeah, and I think with things like Fable, it's fairly easy to fill your bin as long as you're like being quite disciplined and just always discarding two regardless. And
yeah, I also want to once try and cast a free Portal to Phyrexia off.
I don't know how you're going to guarantee that, but that'd be a sweet brew.
Yeah.
Okay, what's your next one?
My next one was actually going to be Tyvar.
Interesting. Okay, Tyvar. I maybe like overlooking Tyvar. So again, for the benefit of people at home, Tyvar Jubilant Brawler is a 3 mana, 3 loyalty planeswalker, 1 black green that says you can activate creatures' abilities as if that creature had haste. His +1 is untap a creature, and his -2 is mill 3 cards, and then you can return a creature with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Yeah. So what's Tyvar up to? Why do you think he's the new hotness?
So Tyvar, I think, is not very good in Standard. So I've not really been that hanged it, but I feel like in Modern and Pioneer, this card is pretty fantastic.
Okay, what does he do there?
So in Pioneer, you have multiple things with him. A lot of people are talking about the Elves deck, but I'm not really a believer in him in the Elves deck. But you can, for example, go turn 1 Llanowar Elf, turn 2 Tyvar, untap your Llanowar Elf, cast another Llanowar Elf, and then you've got turn 3 Vannifar, Prime Speaker Vannifar, which you can instantly activate.
Okay.
So instantly activate and just kill them on turn 3.
So what is it Vannifar was to get, sorry?
So if you play your turn 3 Prime Speaker Vannifar, you activate the Vannifar because you can activate it as though it had haste. You sacrifice your Llanowar Elf. You go get a 2 mana untapper, untap Vannifar, sack the 2 mana untapper, go get Extraction Specialist, use the Extraction Specialist to bring back the 2 mana untapper that you've just sacked. Do this 7 times.
Okay, so Tyvar is up for being explored. He does things.
Yes, and the big one in Modern for me is Devoted Druid. This card is unbelievable with Devoted Druid because you get to win on the spot when you play it. Like it brings back the Devoted Druid with its -2.
Okay, yeah, I can see it. Right, what's your next card?
My next card on my list was gonna be the new Jace. I feel like...
Oh, okay. Right, you're really hitting me. I thought I was going to be the one with like the weird takes. New Jace. Okay.
So
why?
It might just be my over hyped love for the flip Jace Friends Prodigy. But I feel like this is a free mana planeswalker, and any free mana planeswalker just has to be looked at in with a kind of fine-tooth comb to try and find something that it's good at.
Man, I thought I was a magic boomer. You just can't see past a 3 mana planeswalker. Like,
no, I really can't.
I've seen too many bad ones. I've been too burned on 3 mana planeswalkers. So what does he do? So Jace, if in 3 mana mode, he's 2 blue and 1 Phyrexian blue. So let's call him 3 mana. So he's 3 mana for a 3 loyalty planeswalker that gives something gives +1s to give a creature -3/-0, -2s to mill a player for 3 cards. And then if a graveyard has 20 or more cards in it, you draw 3 cards. Otherwise, you draw a card. Okay, so you +1s to soft pacify, -2s to draw a card, essentially.
Yep.
Okay.
And then the X -X is probably going to be irrelevant unless
I don't know. I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it with Jace.
I'm seeing it as kind of a sideboard card in kind of your Grixis standard shells. Because these decks do fill their graveyards extremely quickly, and matches of standard right now are going super long. So if you can bring this down in the late game, where you can find it off your Wandering Minds, you can find it off your Corpse Appraisers, then this comes down in the late game and is just an Ancestral Recall on a stick.
Very interesting. It's interesting because for the first time in my life, really, I am totally out of touch with Standard. Standard used to be my format, so I am looking forward to delving back into Standard with you as we start talking about your RC prep, because I think that might be the thing I need to dive back into the format. So it's interesting that for once it's not me being like, but it's good in Standard though.
It's also pretty interesting with the capricious Hellraiser, the dragon we talked about, the first one.
Oh yeah, okay, because you just mill yourself.
Yeah, you mill yourself for the Hellraiser. It's a hit off the Hellraiser.
I don't know. This is sounding a little bit deep now. You're just playing these bad planeswalkers to make your dragon that might be bad good. Like,
yeah, I guess.
Don't know about that. Okay, next up on the list of might be good at the RC. Man, I like listening to your hot takes, man. I think I might be a better deck builder for this RC. I think my picks are way.
I was trying to get the big splashy ones in first. The kind of the safe picks is probably Shieldred's Edict.
Okay, sure. I was actually going to talk about this, but give me your take on Shieldred's Edict. We all know it's a good card, but Shieldred's Edict's 2 mana. Instant speed, choose one. Each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature. Each opponent sacrifices a creature token, or each opponent sacrifices a planeswalker. So the reason this is like one of the best edicts ever printed is because it gets around the token spam. So if people make creature tokens, normally your edicts are terrible. And it's also essentially a 2 mana hero's downfall, right? Because it's not very often people have more than one walker in play.
And if they do, then just getting rid of one of them.
Yeah, just 2 mana. I'm just imagining this in against control decks. Because normally the thing with control decks is they go 5 mana to Teferi, +1, untap some lands, go, and then you have to fight the Teferi through counter magic. But the fact is just 2 mana, you sack a planeswalker. Okay, they get to draw a card and untap 2 lands, but that's such a huge tempo swing.
Yeah. So the reasons I think that this card is pretty good right now is because in the extremely heavy removal standard format we've got just now, you've got things like the white decks employing Sanctuary Warden, which is a 6 mana creature that comes in and can make a token straight away and still have a shield counter on itself. And it's also a 5 mana 5/5 flyer.
This is that stupid angel that kept beating me in that arena.
Yeah.
Game, right?
And just this, if this comes down, it doesn't care about the shield token. It doesn't care about the shield counter. It doesn't care about the token. Your Sanctuary Warden's just dead. And it's the same with the Wandering Emperor as well. Your opponent flashes in their Wandering Emperor on end step, minuses on your hang, and you can just kill it before it gets to untap and do its thing.
I think this card changes the way you need to play around black decks, because normally your black decks are your kind of mid-range shells, and normally the way to beat them is to go over the top with them, and it's normally with planeswalkers, right? I remember trying to play black decks into Chandra Torch of Defiance metas and things, and it was just miserable because it would go to 5 and you had to spend your whole turn answering it, playing things like that 4 mana spell that exiles a creature or planeswalker, you gain 2 life.
Yeah, and it forced you to overly commit to the board to try and get the planeswalker off.
Or take your entire turn to answer it. But this you can hold this up and instant speed answer planeswalkers is.
Yeah, it's very strong.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think Shieldred's Edict is the home run uncommon from this set.
Yeah, I think you're going to see that, especially in week 1, unless the decks kind of mold themselves to be less weak to this card. I think you're going to see a lot of this.
And what's your last one then?
My last one is the entire cycle of these Phyrexian horrors that can give themselves indestructible counters.
Oh, the kind of the Phyrexian takes on the Managing.
Yes, I think these cards are actually quite strong.
That's interesting. I didn't. So the white one sticks out to me, but I'm a hidden stockpile enjoyer.
The white one sticks out to me for exclusively the reason of curving a wedding announcement into this.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, in standard.
It's only 4 mana as well. Anointed Procession was 4 mana, and
this leaves a 4/4 body that can.
Yeah, that can also protect itself. So, normally being a creature is a downside, but the fact that this can just sacrifice 2 artifacts or creatures to become indestructible.
Yeah, I think that card's pretty strong. I feel like the red and the white ones are probably the strongest for constructed play, in my opinion, the two.
Okay, let's have a look. So we've got what's the blue one?
The blue one is a 3/5 for 2 and a double blue. Flying, if you would proliferate twice instead, then you can remove free counters from among other artifacts, creatures, and planeswalkers you control, and pay 1 Phyrexian blue for Phyrexian blue to give it an indestructible.
Okay, so it's proliferate tribal. Okay, so that one's less exciting.
That one has the problem of having a set mechanic as its payoff.
There's the black one, Drivnod, 5 mana for an 8/3. If a creature dying causes an ability to trigger that ability an additional time, and then you can exile 3 creatures from your graveyard. So this is the sacrifice tribal. This guy probably goes in like if this guy has a home, he's probably going in like a cat oven deck. Or something, right?
Although what we'll say about this one is it is extremely easy to turn on that indestructible in any kind of black creature based deck. So because you don't have to pay the extra 1, you can go on turn 5, just play this. Your opponent tries to kill it, pay 4 life, exile 3 creatures from your graveyard. In the removal heavy meta we've got just now, it's a good chance if you've played free creatures, you've got free creatures in your graveyard. But it is just an 8/3, right? It's just probably going to be just a big dummy.
Yeah. The red one, he doubles your non-combat damage,
yes,
right?
Non-combat damage is doubled.
So, I mean, where's that? It's 4 mana though, right?
Yeah.
So, like, I'm thinking of things that do a similar role. Is this better than Torbrand? I mean, I'm not seeing it, right? The fact Torbrand essentially doubles all the damage.
Yeah.
Right?
It's certainly harder to kill than Torbrand, right? And what was Torbrand's stat?
He's a 2/4 as well, isn't he?
2/4.
Well, I mean, I guess the fact this can like discard cards to make itself indestructible, but
yeah, I just think the mono red deck has been kind of the standard deck of choice for aggro enjoyers. So
really? Is there a good mono red deck in standard? I assumed it would be like a white soldier.
Oh
deck.
yeah, sorry. I kind of almost class that as mid range nowadays. It's going pretty big. There's a mono red deck that's playing like 4 Swift Spears, 4 Bloodthirsty Adversaries, 3 Feldons, Rada's Firebrand, Reckless Stormseeker, Chandra Dress to Kill, Play with Fires, Lightning Strikes, Kamanos.
That'll be a cool one to explore.
Yeah, I think it could be a curve topper in that.
And then the green one's just a commander card, right? He just doubles the power and toughness of all your creatures.
It seems commandery to me. Yeah.
I'm going to be honest, Craig. Like they're particularly cold takes on cards you like in this set.
Yeah, I didn't really have much spicy.
Right. Okay. I'm going to run you through cards, right? Because I've made quite an exhaustive list because I've looked at every card on this set multiple times, so cracking boxes. So I'm going to throw some cards at you, and I'm just keen to see what you think of them, right? Have you had any thought about Ossification? That's the one where you enchant a basic land to exile something. 2 mana, 1 and a white, enchant a land, and then it's an O-ring.
Yeah, I think that
it's like chain to the rocks, but it can go on any basic.
I think that card's very solid, especially in the mono white mid range deck in standard.
Yeah, like surely this is just like white standards removal spell of choice at this point, right?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, you do have lay down arms, which is 1 mana, but this plus lay down arms seems like you've kind of got your removal suite wrapped up in it.
What about Skrell's Hive? How do we feel about Bitter Blossom?
I'm not sure on this one.
No, come on, this has got to be good. This has got to be good.
The clause of this creature can't block, and there's so many creatures that it's just... If toxic,
if the white Dominus has a deck, Skrell's Hive is in it, right?
Possibly. I'll tell you one thing: if Toxic one withered the same way Infect did,
oh no, 100%.
Then this card is
100%.
But without it, I feel like every turn you're just they don't have.
No, like imagine you're curving Skrell's Hive, Wedding Invitation,
Sure.
Dominus. Right. So here's the contentious one, right? Because this is the one everyone's talking about. What do you think of Elish Norn, Mother of Machines? 5 mana, 4/7 vigilance, doubles your ETB effects, stops your opponent's ETB effects.
Sure, but what are your ETB effects?
I'm just asking, just in general, what do you think?
I think it's
because this is the most expensive card in the set. This is the Chase
sure,
Mythic. This is the $50 hit.
I think it's more reasonable in Pioneer than people are giving it credit for. Because I don't think anything kills it. Like, your Leyline Bindings don't kill it because they don't do anything. your ossifications don't kill it if that's coming into Pioneer. But I just don't. I feel like in Standard you're gonna play this, it's gonna get Doombladed, and your opponent's gonna untap. And
Yeah, I kind of soft agree. I'm not super excited by
I
it.
do feel like in other formats it's gonna find home. Like I believe in the enigmatic fires deck in Pioneer. This card is insane.
Okay.
Like,
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Because like this is what I'm thinking. Like 5 mana is a lot for a 4/7 that might do nothing. Because like it's one of those cards where it's a Punisher
Yeah.
effect. So like you're making your opponent's cards do less. But if the cards do nothing, they just don't play them. So you never get to see what they do. Punisher's the wrong word. Do you know what I mean? Like if you've got a creature that gives creatures -1/-1, you don't know how many X1s are in your opponent's hand. So like when it's sitting in play, you don't feel like it does a lot. But like it might be essentially blanking draws. This is the same with Elish Norn. I think it's hard to feel the impact of this card because you don't see what it does because your opponent just won't play their ETB effects.
yeah, like I say, I feel like if you're playing Pioneer and someone curves fires into enigmatic incarnation, then end step sacks the fires to get this, then I think it's near impossible to remove for anything that isn't playing like Dreadbore. And then your deck just is turbocharged the next turn. Every single enchantment you play gets double its effects. Every single creature that you get
You're
from
right.
sacking your enchantments gets double its effects.
I never considered the idea of like Oblivion Ring effects sucking in 2 creatures off the back of this.
Yeah, you leyline binding and just put 2 things under it. You Oath of Chandra, kill 2 things, sack your Oath of Chandra, get a Skyclave apparition, and it takes 2 things as well.
I'm seeing the dream.
For sure. And hear me out on this one. Can you imagine playing the Enigmatic Mirror and your opponent turn 4's this? None of your cards do anything. Like, none of your cards do anything at all.
Yeah, I mean, I guess then at that point as well, like, what does that mirror even look like when you both put an Elish Norn into play?
It's just first one to put an Elish. Oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure, yeah. That mirror gets very uninteresting or interesting, whichever way you want to look at it.
Now, when I was looking at blue cards from this set, there's very few that interested me. Now, the one that does interest me, and this is what I alluded to ages ago when we were talking about the mechanics in the set, right? The one that pops out to me is Prologue to Phyresis, right? 1 in a blue, instant. Each opponent gets a poison counter, draw a card. So it's just a cantrip that gives your opponent a poison counter.
Okay.
Right? Now, the reason this interests me is because what we're talking about proliferate. Because I feel like Corrupted is good because you've got the blue Corrupted counterspell, the one that's counterspell unless they pay 2. If they're Corrupted, it's just straight up counterspell.
Sure, yeah.
And then there's the Anoint with Affliction, that's exile a creature with CMC 3 or less, or if they're Corrupted, just 2 mana, exile a creature, best Doomblade ever printed.
Right.
So I have a feeling if there is a blue-black control deck, it actually wants to corrupt you, but maybe doesn't want to kill you with poison. So it probably runs things that give incidental poison counters and then just proliferates a couple of times.
Yeah.
So I think this is actually a really important part of that puzzle. Just been like, okay, in your end step, when I didn't have to counter anything, give you a poison counter, draw a card, untap, carry on with the rest of the game. And then like slowly, that one drop of oil just ratchets up, and then suddenly your opponent now has counterspell in their deck, and Black Sword to Plowshares in their deck, and like, do you know?
Yeah.
I think this is quietly, potentially, one of the most important cards to enable an entire archetype.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. If something was going to enable a blue-black control deck, I think you might be onto something and that this will happen.
And then, because in the same breath, right, there's very little to talk about in blue. So moving on to black, I feel like Vraska's Fall, which is the edict that gives them a poison counter, is also part of that game plan. I guess its only issue is it's competing for a slot with Shield's Edict, which is, like we talked about, insane.
Yeah.
But I think Vraska's Fall, because it's just each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker and gets a poison counter. So you do give them the choice, so you can't just spike their walker with it. But
it's also
that gets
free
that
mana as well, right?
I know, but like I'm saying, it gets that first poison on them, like, and then you can just proliferate up.
My big problem with this strategy is not that the strategy isn't cohesive in itself, is that just in current standard, Because the mid-range decks are all trying to eat each other, and they're expecting all their creatures to be removed. It's like people are cutting Shieldrids from their Grixis decks to play Wandering Mind. Because people aren't expecting stuff to stick around, everything just has to get value constantly. Like, everything replaces itself and everything, and that's just a control deck's worst nightmare, right?
So, I mean, with these mid-range piles eating each other then, my boy, Phyrexian Obliterator, fucking love this card. Like, I have tried to make this card work so many times. Like, I remember when Modern as a format was announced, I was like, right, let's get in the tank. And in Standard at the time, I played mono black Lash Wraith Phyrexian Obliterator nonsense. Like,
sure.
How do you feel about Obliterator? Like, he's back. Is he as good as he was the last time? He was never good. Is he good this time? Like,
if Shieldred was banned, I think we could have a conversation about Obliterator. But I just feel Shieldred's just so good. Where Obliterator shines in against the aggressive decks, Shieldred's insane there too. But the fact that there's 6 Doomblades in Standard right now as well.
I mean, it still just dies to Wandering Emperor, like you're saying with Shieldred, like
Power Word Kill.
And like, they're not blocking Shieldred, they're not blocking this, they're not burning Shieldred, they're not burning this. You're probably right. Right. So the next card I think is a sleeper hit. I cannot believe this is your MTG Finance recommendation. For this set, right? I cannot believe this card is 20 cents, right? It's a rare. It's called Vindictive Flamestoker. Have you seen this card?
I have not.
Yeah, I was opening this. I was like, man, this card's sick. This card's got to be like a $6 rare. It's 20 cents or something. It's crazy. So it's red, 1 in a red, Vindictive Flamestoker. So he's a Phyrexian wizard, 1/2. So 1 mana for a 1/2. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put an oil counter on it. 6 in a red, sacrifice Vindictive Flamestoker, discard your hand and draw 4 cards. The ability costs 1 less for each oil counter on it. So, like, drawing 4 is massive. Like, normally this effect draws 3. Like, discard your hand, draw 3. Well, we've seen with the Ox of Agonius, and we've seen with there was something else recently that did it. So draw 4 is huge, right? And the thing that struck me about this card is, like, it says non-creature spell. It doesn't say instants and sorceries. Normally these spells, these type of cards say instants and sorceries. The wizard cards, right? It's a Phyrexian wizard. They normally say instants and sorceries.
Sure.
So, like, you are normally expecting to put this into, like, a blue-red, like, opt style deck, right? You put this down, you opt, you like play Vapor Snags or whatever, and like you're just durdling about, and then like you go, I get my payoff. This just says non-creatures.
Yeah.
So like we talked about before with these like kind of mid-range decks that like don't want to play many creatures anyway. Like they want to play planeswalkers and removal spells. I know removal spells and instants and stuff are instants and sorceries, but like it triggers off your planeswalkers. It triggers off like any artifacts you want to run. It triggers off your enchantments, right? So you could run this in like a deck with Phyrexian Arena, for example, and you'll get a counter off that. A bit of a nombo, I guess, because like Phyrexian Arena's drawing you a bunch of cards. So like, but you get what I'm saying, right? Like, this doesn't feel as restrictive in what it can do. Like, this could be in a red-black deck. This could be in a red-green deck.
Yeah, it doesn't have the same drawbacks that you usually see on these
It's going
cards.
to trigger off of like you playing Esseka's Chariot. It's going to trigger off you playing Karn the Great Creator. It's going to trigger off you know what I mean? Like, I think this card could be massive. Like, because you put this down on turn 1, is your opponent going to kill it? Is your opponent going to spend like their 1 mana removal spell on this? Are they like, and then are they going to push this and then let you untap and play a Misery Shadow? I just think this card does so much for 1 mana. And even in the late game, if you draw this in the super late game, you draw it, you play it, if they kill it, who cares? And if they don't kill it, you untap and draw 4, right?
Sure. I feel like I'd have to see this play out to properly like
I don't know, something in me is just like, this card is calling to me, and this I just feel like this card can't be bad. I think this card has got to be like not a 10 cents card or a 20 cents card or whatever it's sitting at right now. There's no way. Like,
yeah, I like I say, this is one of these cards that I think I've in the past maybe I write off cards pretty quickly, and you're right. I might have went past this, but I just don't know.
But no, I don't think it's just you. I just don't understand why people are sleeping on this. Like,
you could proliferate the counters up, I guess, as well.
I mean, yeah, that's if you want to get fancy, but you don't have to, right? If you just play this on turn 1 and then play a normal game of Magic, on turn 5 you get to draw 4 cards.
I can see it. I'm not. I wouldn't put a stamp on this and say I'm convinced yet, but
No, not at all. But like, I think if you have $5, you should just go and buy 25 of these and see what happens. Like,
yeah.
But yeah, and then the other red card that I had was the Capricious Hellraiser. Then into green, we talked a wee bit about it. The Bloated Contaminator, right? 3 mana, 4/4, trample, toxic, proliferate. When it hits you, proliferate. So this basically has toxic 2.
Yeah.
So it's 4 mana, 3/3 with toxic 2 and trample, which is great. But the other thing is, like I was saying, because they don't use because like toxic doesn't matter really until it does. Like, even if this card didn't have toxic, I think this card would still be like one of the best green rares.
Yeah.
If it was just trample and when it hits them, proliferate, it's nuts, right? Like, imagine this in like any green-white counters deck. Like,
yeah, I totally see that in a Pioneer like mono green black hardened scales.
Yeah, hardened scales, like, and then plus it's got like the toxic proliferation to care about. It's got oil counter proliferation to care about. Like, this has got to just have a million homes. Like, just on stats, and then the fact it does so many different, like, proliferation interacts with so many different things. It's got toxic, so it's auto included in all the toxic decks, and it's just a 3 mana 4/4, which, like, is always going to be playable in a green stompy deck.
Yeah,
right?
if your format revolves around good, well-statted creatures, then this is always going to be in the discussion. It's Steel Leaf Champion without hard to cast mana cost, right? Like,
card's great. Like, it just can't be bad. Like, that's why I'm surprised you didn't mention it. I thought this would be like a slam dunk of like cards I need to try for this RC.
So here's the distinction that I think. If there was a Llanowar elf in this format, this would be on my hot list.
Right. Well, there's no Llanowar elf, but when I think of Steel Leaf Champion, the other one drop that comes to my head is Pelt Collector, and there is a Pelt Collector in this format.
Okay.
You've got Evolving Adaptive.
I forgot about that one.
Yeah, exactly. Evolving Adaptive, single green for a 0/0. When it enters the battlefield with an oil counter on it, it gets +1/+1 for each oil counter on it. And then when a creature you control has greater power or toughness comes into play, it gets another oil counter.
Oh, so this not only pumps that, it also proliferates the oil counters on it?
Right, yeah. And also, this is like, so it doesn't get trample like Pelt Collector did, but it cares about power and toughness. It's just got a wider spectrum of like what it can be buffed by. If I was building a standard deck right now from like trying to showcase cards from this set, I think I would need to just start with like 4 Evolving Adaptives, 4 Bloated Contaminator, then have a look at the format. Because like, if I'm going to build a green stompy deck, I just think that's, I don't know. You're playing.
Yeah, your curve's very strong. You've got like relevance at every.
Yeah. Right. And here's the other thing. While we're talking about this green stompy deck, the other green card I've earmarked fits right into this curve, which is the Canker Bloom, right? So it's a 2 mana 3/2, which is already decent stats, right? 3/2 for 2 mana is great, and then it's you can sacrifice it for 1 mana to destroy an artifact, destroy an enchantment, or proliferate, for the same reasons that I think the Outland Liberator is great, because it just incidentally answers so many things. So does this, but you can also blow your opponents out in combat by just sacking it to proliferate if you've got counters and things all over the place. Like, and so you go turn 1, Evolving Adaptive, turn 2, Canker Bloom, attack you for 2 with Evolving Adaptive, turn 3, Bloated Contaminator, put another counter Evolving Adaptive, you're attacking for 6 on turn 3, like, you can, like, and then you can start proliferating and like.
Where does your curve end in this? Like, are you playing the Nissa, or are you?
When we start brewing for RPTQ, we can think about that. But
Sure.
but for the RC, right? But that's what I mean. I just think like the green deck builds itself here. Even if there's nothing in current standard, which again I've not explored, I've not really thought about it since last rotation. Like, I think that's a good enough like 1, 2, 3 curve to start building on. And then Nissa was the other green card that I earmarked, because like, again, this is another card. I don't get why this card is like $9. Like, why is Elishnorn $40 or $50 when literal Craterhoof Behemoth is in the set? Like, we've seen this before. Creator Hoof Behemoth came out, people went, how good is it? And then it got put in every green EDH deck, and it's just, again, $40 or whatever Creator Hoof Behemoth is worth. Like, this card is just Creator Hoof Behemoth. This is like 7 mana, like, end the game. It's just redundancy in like your mono green commander decks. Like, I just think this Nissa is going to have a home forever in green commander. So like, if you want to invest in something, I think this is an easy invest. It's not the cheapest thing. It's not like that other guy where I said buy all the 20 pence cards. Like,
yeah, you're not buying 50 of them.
It is $8 or $9, but I mean, I think this is easily like a $30 card in like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, the play pattern of it is just like, even if you cast it at 5 mana, you +1 make a 4/4, +1 make a 5/5, +1 make a 6/6.
I guess the only thing that makes this bad is like then if they cast Shield's Edict, you lose all your creatures as well, right? Because the X is tied to her loyalty, right?
No. So what it is it is locked to when the creature was made.
Oh, really? So this doesn't reference Nissa?
Yeah, so if you cast it for 5 mana, it comes in as a free loyalty planeswalker. You +1. It will be a 4/4 regardless of what.
Right. Okay. I thought they grew with her and died with her.
No. They're just statted at that point.
That's interesting. That's a lot. Yeah. Like, I mean, I don't know if it's better, but it's a different card from what I thought it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then like -1, just destroy an artifact or enchantment. Like, we saw that on like Vivian Reed and stuff like in the past. Like, she was just great because she had that ability and then did other things. Like, so no, I think Nissa is insane. I think Nissa's going to see play in a bunch of formats forever. Like, she's not going to define a format, but she's going to just keep cropping up, just Creator Hoofing people out of the game. But no, that 1/2/3 card was great. And then the other 2 cards that I have earmarked, one of them's a pet card, and one of them I think is actually good. So the first one I want to talk about that's actually good is Venser Corpse Puppet. So it's a blue-black 1/3 lifelink toxic 1. And it says, whenever you proliferate, choose 1. If you don't control a creature named a Hollow Sentinel, make a Hollow Sentinel, which is a 3/3 golem token. If you do have a Hollow Sentinel, basically, target artifact creature you control gains flying or lifelink. So you can give your Hollow Sentinel flying or lifelink.
Sure.
What do you think of Venser?
Like, if this blue-black deck that you were talking about
this is it, right? Yeah. So this is your payoff for proliferating. He can enable the first toxic himself. Like, I don't know. I just think like this is another card that's worth exploring. I think this card does too much for 2 mana to ignore.
Sure.
And then it's got lifelink as well. It's 1/3 lifelinker. So what your blue-black control decks lose to, they lose to aggro decks. This guy's a lifelinker who makes another guy who can be a lifelinker. Like,
if this corrupted blue-black deck can work, this has got to be a part of it.
Now, my last card, right? And I want to just talk about it because I love the design and I love this colour combination. I'm actually surprised you didn't mention it in the intro. I am a black-green aficionado, so I would be behest to not mention the Glissa Sunslayer. Because, like, I played the shit out of the old Glissa, the Traitor, the First Strike Death Touch that loops artifacts out your bin when things die.
Okay.
I had a really sweet... it was really sweet. I don't know how good it was, but it was like a Kuldotha Forge Master deck where like you used Glissa to loop like Accorder's Shields and Perilous Mirrors to kill your opponent's creatures to then like sacrifice them to Kuldotha Forge Master, and then you went and got like the Contaminating Engine and like used that to wrath your board, which got you all your crap artifacts back. And then you put them back into play and used Kuldotha Forge Master to then go and get a Platinum Empyrean or a Blightsteel Colossus and just kill them. Like, it was super sweet. But Glissa Sunslayer, right? 1 black green, 3/3, First Strike Death Touch. Surely that card would be close to playable. 3 mana, 3/3, First Strike Death Touch.
Yeah.
Right? You can't deal with this creature in combat. You can't. It's just right. And then it's also got more text that says when it hits a player, you draw a card, lose 1 life. So just when you hit a player, draw a card. It's got a fiddy in text.
Yeah.
Or destroy an enchantment, or remove up to 3 counters from target permanent. Probably the least relevant, but like it makes it kind of like Vampire Hexmage as well, right? Because
for sure.
Because they can't block it really, right? So they're not blocking it, so it's getting through, and if it hits them, you're just taking 3 counters off their planeswalker. Or you're drawing a card, or you're destroying an enchantment. Like, I don't know how good it is, but it feels like it's got too many appealing bits of text on it for it to be bad.
See, I believe again in standard. It also depends if the set kind of changes current standard to make it less kind of removal heavy. But this might just die before you get your first effect, and then you're not going to be super happy. But I will say that in Pioneer, it seems like if you're trying to make a green-black deck in Pioneer, is there a better free drop?
I need to have a think about it, but
except for maybe
I don't know. Like I am prepared to accept that it might not be good enough. Just like my boy the Grim Flayer isn't good enough.
Yeah, so like it's kind of competing with Graveyard Trespasser. But if people aren't killing stuff, then it's insane.
Yeah.
Blocks an Adeline. Adeline can't attack through.
This is the thing as well. It's just such a good defensive card. So like I feel like if I was playing Glyssa and seriously trying to be like, I am a deck that really cares about Glyssa, I'm probably a deck that's playing Snakeskin Veil or something, right? Do you know what I mean? Like let's just be a green-black creature deck. Like I don't even know. Is this maybe like a shell that we can start looking at Winding Constrictor again? Oh my god, that'd be so good, wouldn't it? Winding Constrictor.
And then you play the 3 mana 4/4 that proliferates when it hits.
Do you know what? Now my head is just trying to make Winding Constrictor work. Now I'm asking myself, why are we not playing Hangerback Walker and Pioneer? Like, what's going on?
I always forget that Hangerback Walker is in Pioneer.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy, right? But like, that's a whole tangent, and this episode has almost went on too long.
Yeah, the one card that I will say that I forgot to mention in my cards is Skrelv Defector Might.
Well, do you know, he was going to be an honourable mention. I actually have him in white, and when I had to just cut how many white cards I wanted to talk about.
Sure.
Skrelv was the last one.
I think that card in Pioneer is going to make some real swings in what's playable. Because I really feel like this thing, in your Boros Heroic decks, your Vanifar Prime Speaker combo decks, if anyone happens to be brewing that up, your decks like that, like just a mother of runes in every format has just made these decks so much better. Like your Hammer Time decks in Modern, your Death and Taxes decks and things. Like this effect of just being able to blank removal, it says you have to remove this before you get the option of removing anything else.
Yeah.
Has always just been really good for these decks.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big difference with Skrelv is that, like, he doesn't give protection, right?
Sure, it can't be used defense.
Well, you can't. Oh, because he does stop blocking, doesn't he? So you can't.
Yeah, he stops blocking.
Yeah, okay, right. So it is soft protection. Okay, I was thinking but you can't use it to force them through, but it does do that.
The only thing it doesn't do that Mother of Runes does is you can't block something, and then give it pro so that your creature doesn't die.
There is one other card that I deliberately did not talk about because I think it almost asks for its entire own episode.
Okay.
Which I really would want to deep dive into this card in a bunch of like formats and discussions, and it's the Venerated Rot Priest, the one who, whenever you target it whenever it becomes a target of a spell, target opponent gets a poison counter. I think this card changes the game in so many places. I think we could talk about this card for half an hour, so I deliberately left it off of this because I think this reshapes so many formats. Like, I was going to ask for like a summary of this set, but like I think the fact that like we've been able to talk so much about the new set and like the cards that have potential, I think it's just a testament to how like impactful this set is. Like what I was saying before.
Definitely.
I don't think we could have had this sort of conversation about Dominaria United or Brothers War. I think this set is going to have a massive impact on everything. Like we said, Toxic is a home run. Corrupted is so interesting. Proliferate being back just does so much, and then like there's so many high impact cards. Like I'm saying, there's cards in here that are 20 cents, and like the reason they might be 20 cents is it's just box EV, which we can talk about as well at some point, like how box EV is just such a wild concept, and cards existing actually drive down the price of other cards, because you can only, even if every card in the set is good, not every card in the set can be expensive.
Yeah, whenever one effect becomes the best of that effect, 4 other effects become worse.
Well, not even that. Just like when we think back to Cans of Tarkir, because that was farmed for fetches, it just meant Seed Rhino was 50 pence. And Seed Rhino was the best creature in the format, because a box can never realistically be worth more than its retail price when it's still in print.
Yeah.
There just has to be an EV on the box, and the EV on the
Yeah.
box can't really exceed the price of the box. So as long as Eilish is 50, and all of these like random oil slick cards are knocking about and have a high price ticket, it just means stuff like Bloated Contaminator is just going to be $1 because
Yeah, and your Skrell's hides are always going to be $1.
well, that's it, right? So yeah, I think it's a really, really exciting set for a lot of reasons.
For sure.
So I'm looking forward to talking about this set more because I think has a massive impact across the board. I think this is one of the best sets in a long time. It's definitely one of the most exciting sets in a long time.
I definitely agree. I've never been this excited to delve into a limited format. I really, really enjoyed the pre-release and really looking forward to getting some drafts in.
That would be fun actually. And I guess you'll be getting closer to the RC, so I don't know how interested you'll be in discussing limited, but I'd like to think after a couple of weeks, like it'd be interesting to go and have a review of the limited format. And
No, I'll definitely be drafting it at least a little. So.
to round it off, what are your spec cards? What cards do you think, even if they're not these obviously good cards, what cards do you think are going to be super relevant before the next set comes out? What are you going to bet on?
Skrell, Defector, Might, and Pioneer. I think that's going to see a lot of play.
So we're going to see Stock and Skrelv go up.
Yeah.
What
we're
else do you
gonna
think?
See Shieldred's Edicts in the first week be huge.
Yep.
And I believe there's going to be way too many people playing the Cacophony, Scamp in a Boros Hammer Time deck in Pioneer that isn't very good.
Okay. So you're down on Cacophony, Scamp.
Down on Cacophony,
You're up on
Scamp, high on
Skrelv.
Skrelv.
And you think Shieldred's Edict is going to...
I think it's going to see a lot of play.
Okay. I think I'm gonna put my money on this Flamestoker. I think this Flamestoker is going to be everywhere. I think by the time we get to rotation, Vindictive Flamestoker is going to have at least a strong representation. If it's not in most red decks, I think it is going to have a deck. I think there's no way this card doesn't find a home.
So
I think this card...
I've just ordered 25, Kev, so I'll be holding you to that one.
I think before the next set comes out, this card's going to be a $4 card. I'm going to say it. I'm going to put my money on that. That's going to be a $4 card. Then my other thing is, I think that green Stompy Shell has to be good too.
Okay.
Like, I'm putting it all in on, like, the Contaminator specifically is going to be great. There's no way it doesn't find a home, but I think the combination of Contaminator, Evolving Adaptive, and Canker Bloom has to be a standard shell. Like, the format is absolute dog shit if that's not a shell. Like, 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop, green cards that all synergize with each other. If that isn't good enough to at least be playable, then the format's dog shit, I'm sorry. And then I am going to say that Prologue to Phyresis will see play. I don't know if it's going to be in a... There might just be a blue-green Infect deck, you know? It might just be like this blue-green... Like, it might be in there. There might be dreams of this blue-black... Give you one poison counter and then just control the game and proliferate you dead. That might exist.
Well, I mean, that Vraska Planeswalker's pretty good in that idea, right?
Yeah. There's loads to explore. I think Prologue to Phyresis sees play. Will it be best deck? Maybe not, but I think it sees play. I think that card has too much potential to not see play. So that's my 3 hot takes. I think the green cards being good is the coldest take, but I don't think there is a green Stompy deck in Standard right now. So I think this enables an entire archetype. Vindictive Flamestoker. Go buy them now, folks.
I literally just bought 25, so I really hope you're right.
And Prologue to Phyresis sees play.
I didn't buy 25 of that.
But yeah, that wraps it up. This probably leads us into a good spot to be discussing actual standard decks in the next episode.
Yeah, I look forward to it. I'm gonna hopefully get knocked into that as soon as tomorrow night if I can get the cards for Magic Online, and we'll start testing that.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Hopefully, like again, this is kind of the pilot, so hopefully it's been interesting for you guys to listen to as well. The musics of the most hated man in Scottish Magic and and some boomer who runs a card store. But it was good for me. How was it for you?
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Right, okay. I guess we'll see you all for the next episode.
Yeah, see y'all later.